So one thing Chibnall was criticized by some for doing in the last two series were the way he handled companions. You know, having three companions with the new Doctor, and some of the just kind of juggling them, trying to juggle them. How would you guys like to see the companion situation change in Series 13, if at all? This could be like have some of them leave, or all of them leave, or maybe bringing in new ones. So we can go in the same order as before.
Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward one for me. I actually want them to do what it looks like they are doing, which is ditching Ryan and Graham and keeping Yaz. I am one of the people who does feel very strongly that three companions, it's not that inherently three companions is too much. It was too much to bring in with a doctor we didn't know yet. So we had neither the time to get to know Jodie Whittaker very well, and she didn't have a definitive connection clearly with one companion, because you learn a lot about who the doctor is through that connection, and she just hasn't built one yet. So given that at this point it really does feel like Ryan and Graham have had their utility and they've kind of had arcs, Graham coming to terms with Grace dying and Ryan getting more confidence in himself plus their own relationship, it really feels like they've come to a comfortable point where it's good for them to leave. And I would really like to just leave Yaz, no new companions on top of that, leave Yaz and have them build up that connection between them so that we can honestly, so I can better understand Jodie's doctor through that relationship, because I really have come to the conclusion that so much of what we know about the doctor is how they relate to the companions, and she's been a little bit distant to all three of them so far, more than I would have liked.
Yeah, um, I'm fairly in a fairly similar boat that I don't want them all to stick around. Um, I Now that Jack is clearly back in the picture, I would be very happy with him hopping on board the TARDIS for a long run of adventures, like one of the new show. Um, I would really enjoy that because I love Jack as a character, and Chibnall's got experience writing him. He did 2 seasons, or was it 3 seasons of Torchwood? I've not seen any of those recently though, and the one I did watch back, Jack was a bit odd in it. Um, what is it? He defends Gwen from someone saying that from someone calling her like a little girl out of her depth. He says she doesn't look like any little girl to me. She's got all the right curves in all the right places, and I go, ugh. But that's a bit of a tangent. I'd like to see Jack back, and Chibnall has experienced writing him, so I'd be very happy seeing him board the TARDIS for some actual trips.
Was it me next? Or
Yep.
yeah, okay. I pretty much agree with everything Nathaniel was saying. That we shouldn't have started with three straight off the bat. I've always kind of thought we should have started with maybe Ryan as the main, and then halfway through the season you get Graham come in, and then Yaz is sort of the Mickey Jackie homebound character. That would have helped it make it a lot more sort of easing it in. Now that we didn't get that, I think they should go with the direction of getting rid of Graham and Ryan and having Yaz there's the only companion, maybe, so then we can get more sort of a family dynamic in series 13 as well, because it feels like they kind of tried tiptoeing around that in the first two series, but they didn't really do anything with it. There was just like 2 episodes where they kind of touched upon it. And I feel like if they'd given that more of a focus, we'd have more of a connection with their character as a companion. So yeah, I think just Yaz is the way they should move forward.
Yeah, I actually liked how Chibnall started off the run, how it was like 4 leads in this family unit, because I think Chibnall approached companions very differently to how Moffat and Rusty Davis had done, where the companions were so centric to everything and so singular, more or less. So when you had Amy and Rory, their marriage was a big factor into it as well. So that having this sort of 4 leads family unit thing was a really interesting approach to take. But then in Resolution, when Ryan and Graham kind of came to the end of their respective arcs, but then they stayed on board, I think it kind of showed that they had very little to do. Like, I know that Jay pointed this out on Twitter as well, but when the Doctor Who Instagram account posted that basketball thing from Spyfall, and then timeless children. It's like that's. It seems like Ryan's only purpose in series 12 was to throw a basketball and a bomb, and that's not really adequate characterization. I know, like Tosin Cole, Bradley Walsh have been really good in the series, in my opinion. But yeah, I think just having maybe the Doctor and Yaz in series 13, and then maybe bring on Jack, kind of akin to like series 1 when he joins in 3/4 of the way through. I think that would be the best approach to take for companions.
Yeah, I kind of agree with boringly. I kind of agree with everybody's thoughts so far. I think it's time for Graham and Ryan to go. I think Graham and Ryan, like you say, everyone said they've had their arcs, and in series 11 we definitely didn't get enough of Yaz, and we got a little bit more insight into her character in series 12. But to me, it's still not enough, and I don't know. It really feels like she and the Doctor have this friendship that we could do so much more to tap into in series 13. I really want to see that dynamic of one of you said something about we learn more about a Doctor from their interactions and relationships with a companion, and I think it still doesn't feel like it's. I mean, I remember having a realization halfway through series 12 that we were at halfway through series 6 if it had been Amy and Rory, if you get my gist. It jarred for me that, wow, we've had that same amount of time, and yet it really felt like we knew Amy and Rory halfway through series 6, whereas halfway through series 12, Graham, Ryan and Yaz all still felt like new characters to me. And I think part of it's overcrowding, but part of it was just some kind of weird refusal to explore those relationships. So I'm looking forward to getting more Yaz. And I think the way to get more Yaz is to boot Graham and Ryan out. I think definitely.
Yeah, so it seems like pretty much all of us are kind of on the same page with this. I think the only time that I can think of that there were three companions with the new Doctor was like like the earliest season 1 in 1963, and that was kind of like and I think they were handled differently. I think they were characterized better than how they are.
Peter Davison had 3 companions for a little while, and it didn't work well then either.
Sarah Jane is probably the best example of someone who's had 3 companions and it's worked great.
But I think
It's so true. That's a really good point. Yeah, that is so true.
But with something like that, because I'm assuming you're referencing the Sarah Jane Adventures,
Yeah.
People knew who Sarah Jane was coming in, and so they
Mhm.
only had to learn these other 3 characters. And actually, to go back to the beginning of the show in '63, it was okay that they had 4 because at that point, the Doctor we knew almost nothing about. He was deliberately mysterious at that point, and he wasn't even they weren't even sure he was going to necessarily be the focus of the show when they started.
Mm.
But when you introduce 3 companions at the same time as a Doctor we don't know yet.
Plus, back then in the first in the first run of the show, the episodes were so much longer. They had so much more time to actually show you who these people were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those characters, like, they would conflict with each other. They'd disagree and butt heads occasionally. Whereas I think the TARDIS fam, as it currently stands, what do they disagree on?
Yeah,
Like,
there's
where
no,
did
Very
no
Zero
little.
conflict.
Zero.
Yeah,
It's,
like the good positive vibes is it has its like moments, and it has its place, but I don't know what any of the companions would be like separated from the Doctor, and I think
Yeah,
that in and of itself is an issue.
the good vibes, that it feels like without that conflict, the good vibes mean less, because if they clashed, then it would mean more when they don't clash, if that makes any sense. Because then it would feel like, oh right, this is something actually good and not just, oh, it's just the usual.
I hadn't thought of that. That is a good point. And actually, what it made me think of is a show that I think I like a lot more than a lot of people. But I really like Legends of Tomorrow. And one of the things I really like about that show is this team very obviously care about each other, but they are constantly butting heads because they all have different approaches on things. But they also all care about each other and they all matter. But they agree on almost nothing, like ever.
Yeah, because you kind of you look back at series 1 of New Who, and the Doctor and Rose constantly argued and stuff. In almost every episode, there was something they had a conflict about, and then there was Mickey as well, who was a character that always conflicted with the Doctor. So did Jackie. So that meant that at the end of the series, where they sort of all decided, okay, we're going to help Rose get back to the Doctor, it meant something. So it was like, these are 2 characters that the Doctor has done nothing good for almost. He's ruined their lives, and yet they're deciding, okay, let's help Rose get back to the Doctor. So it felt like a big moment because they had that conflict. And so, yeah, if you have the conflict, it makes the resolutions of happiness, I guess, feel better.
And the conflict only makes sense in episodes where you are dealing with more complex moral situations, even when they're not that complex. You know, when you're dealing with life and death situations that most people don't have to deal with in their lives, or at least not, you know, very often. Uh, when you're dealing with that on a week-to-week basis, of course, there's going to be disagreements coming up there. That's only natural, and you're going to learn a lot about people through how they want to handle situations and what it is that they will speak up about when they think the Doctor is mishandling a situation.
You could see attempts in series 12 to inject a little bit more conflict. I think that the Doctor being kind of moody with the companions, and some of the stuff about, you know, the Doctor's angst about Gallifrey being destroyed again, but it just never really rang true for me because it was very the Doctor and the companions, and the power imbalance didn't work, and it didn't hit the right marks for me.
Another thing about like her being moody about Gallifrey and stuff is they kind of forgot about it in some episodes and then suddenly went back to it as if it just happened, and it sort of felt like disjointed because they were kind of like, oh well, this is a story that's important for the wider series, so now let's revisit that, which kind of just felt a bit off.
That's symptomatic of Chibnall's approach to characterization in general. You find that, you know, you've got the bulk of a story, then you've got, okay, let's sit and have a 5-minute scene where we talk about our feelings right now, which I find ineffective.
And it was exactly that with Gallifrey being destroyed again, where they had the Doctor would be fine in her usual self for the whole episode, and then maybe for 3 minutes at the end of the episode, she would remind you that she's grumpy by going and staring at Gallifrey at the TARDIS, which isn't really. It's like it's almost a separate character where she will go away and just remind you that she's got this thing going on that doesn't affect her life at all because you've just seen her living her life normally, or it doesn't affect her day to day rather.
And like the moments of conflict are like so detached from everything else. Like when is it the end of It Takes You Away when Ryan and Yaz are saying like, how long like do you think we'll travel? And then but that's the scene. That's all that happens in it. They don't actually expand or properly delve on it. So the fact that they don't elaborate on it makes it more obvious that it's kind of lacking in that respect, because they give it like a cursory notice and then just ignore the rest, and then just ignore it afterwards.